Session. We have item number 15 on our council meeting agenda. And I don't know if our city clerk needs to finish up what we were just voting on before you introduce the item. Okay. And this is the resolution to certify the county clerk's recall petition results and the placement of that on our ballot. Do we have Mr. Kandati speaking to this, or do we have?
I can.
Okay, thank you.
Unless you want to, but I did send you guys an email today to hopefully answer any questions, but this is basically just a ministerial act. The petitions are already going on the ballot. This is just determining which ballot they go on. This is to consolidate with the March 3rd election. If you guys do not adopt this today, the county clerk can just put it on the ballot. Any other election besides March 3rd will be deemed a special election, which will cost the city more money than if we had it on the March 3rd. So, any questions?
Any questions amongst the council? Councilmember Krohn?
Were you able to do a calculation of how much just having this particular initiative on will cost the city?
I don't think there's any way to break it down at $2 to $4 a voter. And we already have 2 ballot measures on it. So just, the more items we put on, the higher it gets, but I don't think they can break it down.
My understanding from the county elections official is that the cost of consolidating with the city election is determined on a per registered voter basis, but having more than one measure on the ballot doesn't increase the cost.
I think it does. But I just, that's my understanding, is it gets closer to $4 the more items, because you have more ballot materials to mail out, you have more,
But it's within the range of $2 to $4 per voter. Okay. Councilmember Glover?
Thanks. And just to clarify what we mentioned before, if we don't certify this or vote to put it on the ballot, then it would get deferred to the county, and either way, it'll be associated with the March 3rd ballot, or that'll push it to a special election.
Well, they would probably put it on the March 3rd ballot, because they want to have one election as opposed to 2 back-to-back.
Right. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Cummings.
Questions for the city attorney. I was just wondering, for the public's interest, if you might be able to just explain a little bit, how this process works in terms of us, voting on this today. There's people who are going to be running for different seats, and people are going to be voting either in favor of the recall. And I think there might be some confusion in the community as to how this process works. And so I was just wondering if you could just briefly go over that.
Okay.
Sure thing. So first of all, as the city clerk mentioned, this is a ministerial action. By law, the measure is required to go to the voters if it obtains sufficient signatures in the petition gathering to qualify for the ballot. So that's part one. Part two is that for a recall election, it's really a 2-step process. First is a question, and the ballot language that's contained in the resolution bears this out. There's the first question is whether or not the council member should be recalled. And then if that question is answered in the affirmative by a majority of the voters, then the second question is there are a list of candidates between now and December 19th. Members of the public who are registered to vote will have the opportunity to submit ballot or submit their names for consideration on the ballot. And so then the second question would be of those who submitted, which candidate for the replacement receives the largest number of votes. So the highest vote getter would serve out the duration of the term of the council member who is recalled. And there are 2 separate questions, and members of the candidates can file for either office but not both. So the same person can't put their name in for both seats.
And did you have anything to add? Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Glover?
I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure I didn't mishear you. Did you say you favor the recall?
No, I said that I asked the question of, could the city attorney explain this process?
Okay.
So how does this work for the general public?
Yeah, it knocked me sideways. I was like, what? No, that's okay. Thank you.
Unless there aren't any additional questions, we'll go ahead and hear from the public. Is there any member of the public that wants to address the council on this item? This is item number 15 on our agenda. Please come forward. You'll have up to 2 minutes.
Council members, I think it's important that everybody understand how this came about. The Rose Report was employed to investigate 11 or so allegations of misconduct on the part of 2 council members, and only 2 of them were sustained. And that suspension pivoted around 1 council member's personal experience. That would be Council Member Myers. And from that, we've had 2 groups in town who have gone out collecting signatures with varying levels of mendacity. Don't get to use that word often. Lies and damn lies were used to coerce people into signing the petitions. The signatures were submitted, and I'm sure that the signatures were verified, but we have a complaint that's been filed with the Secretary of State regarding unfair campaigning practices on the part of the signature gatherers, and we are following up with further evidence that some of the signature gatherers were underage. And if this proves to be true, there will be a whole bunch of signatures that should be thrown out. And so I would say that the citizens of this community need to be very careful in how they evaluate how this came to be, because it's bogus.
Next speaker.
My name is Ralph Tunstall. I'm, as a street musician and performer, the person that has advocated for people like myself to be able to do what we do is Ben Drew. He's made meetings with us. And with the situations being as volatile as they've been, of being downtown, rules changing one day, not knowing what's going on, the only person that I've had that I feel has been an advocate for me and people like me has been Drew. I mean, like, we were having a meeting and someone came up and asked specific questions about that. And not only was he ready with answers that weren't like rehearsed, but it was a personal thing that we got to experience, that this is someone we know advocates for street performers, people that, I mean, I got a little PTSD last winter sleeping on the streets down here. But I'm one of those people who I've been blessed, and I've gone through the system. I've stayed at Coral Street. I went to an SLE. I've been through the whole system. But it's not as easy as people think it is. So, you know, a lot of things that he has advocated for us are future. So I just wanted to say in his behalf that, yeah, I think that this is completely a waste of time and money. Thanks.
This is disappointing. I voted for Drew Glover and Justin Cummings in 2018. They represent me. I'm a progressive, I'm queer, and I live in Santa Cruz, and most importantly, I'm poor. My first job was as a janitor, and I've never gotten paid more than $16 an hour, and that was for a very short amount of time. I own 1 pair of shoes. They're on my feet. The attempted removal of Drew Glover is a coup. They want to remove me and people like me. They want to steal our voices from us. They don't consider us civil enough, dignified enough, or important enough to listen to. We chose Drew for the precise reason you were trying to remove him. He calls out negligence, elitism, and moral failings. He does not let them sit and fester. He hosts weekly meetings in which the community can come together and discuss pressing issues and ask difficult questions. He moves to extend our time to speak, while some would like to shorten it. I'll read you a quote. If not for my gender, if I were a man, they would not question my integrity. There would not be this question of my character. That's a quote from the mayor, and I would like to respectfully disagree. You are elected officials, and no one is above scrutiny when they are an elected official, regardless of gender, race, sexual orientation, anything. None of you are above it. None of you are above questioning. The decisions you make are life and death. You should be encouraging people to question you. Asking difficult questions is the first step to understanding, and people who demand that they never be questioned are people who fear being understood for who they truly are.
Hi, Elise Casby. My basic proposition today is that the community and all of us elected, well, I'm not elected, but you are, all of us activists and elected officials and as many people as possible scrutinize the legal and illegal aspects that have already happened in this recall. I think that this is an important case in the United States, and the reason is that the groups that are waging this recall are absolutely real estate, developer, multinational corporate speculatory real estate interests, and it is about big money. And it's also about small private residential owners, property owners, and I'm sorry, who are aligned with very greedy and hostile elements that are taking apart our city. And so this is about big corporate money. It's about corporate personhood, and it is about absolutely illegal activity every step of the way through. Let me just iterate some. The recall itself. It is absolutely being misused. Is a recall a democratic platform? Yes, it is. But the basis of the recall needs to be substantiated. Every important allegation in the Rose Report went unsubstantiated. The censoring did not happen because it was inappropriate and unfair. It was also hostile. The use of the Commission on the Prevention of Violence Against Women was egregious and hostile. The slander and the defamation of character that is happening here needs to be backed up with legal action. We need to look at the constitutional elements of this, and if we have to set a precedent in this city to call out this egregious, horrible, and especially deceptive, where no malfeasance on the part of Glover or Drone has been substantiated, absolutely needs to happen.
Hi, I'm Robert Endicott Keller, and last year this time I was homeless and I was battling with addiction. I was on my way to jail, and I've been poor my whole life. Today, my life is amazing, and it's because of the investment, I would say, that Drew Glover has put into my life. Personally, and into the causes that actually can help me pull out of being that way. The time he spends, he was coming into jail and talking to us in jail. The time he listens to us, I think it's important that, like, if you're poor and you suffer with, you struggle with recidivism, and you have addiction problems, and you are experiencing homelessness, Drew Glover is your man. And I think it's messed up that you guys are trying to take our voice. He's our voice. He speaks for us. There's a group of us out here that are like struggling. We're doing our part, but we need you guys to accept us. And Drew listens to us. He invests his time, his personal time. He listens. I mean, that's all I got right now. But thank you.
I just want to say I feel really sad about this. I have nothing but the deepest respect for both Councilmember Glover and Councilmember Crone. I see how deeply they both care about issues that concern the community, and I've just heard a few people from the community speak specifically about that, and I've experienced that myself. I don't live in Santa Cruz, but I call this my community, and I feel their integrity. So I feel sad that this is happening, and I feel especially distressed and sympathetic with what it must feel like to have to vote for this today, or have to even have the don't know if they will vote on it or rescind their votes or whatever, but that there's that need to even do that. So I guess if there were, I always look for some positive in anything, and I think if the only two things I could think of is it's shown the division in our community and how that we don't listen to each other, and how there's, it's brought lots of things forward, this recall. And the other thing that is positive, I think it's brought a lot of us together in a much deeper way in the fighting the recall, seeing, learning more about each other, really coming together in ways that I've never experienced before. The groups that I'm part of are extremely beautiful. People share deeply from their heart, and I see that we're all going to go out and support you in defeating this vote. So my heart goes out to both of you, my support. Thank you.
Hello, I'm natealex.kennedy@gmail.com, 346-9888. What I've got to say is Drew has got to be one of the coolest guys I've ever met in my whole life. He's very relaxed, very honest. Is that what this recall really is all about? That we've got an honest politician that doesn't bow down to corruption? That's what it feels like. And Chris, you're a pretty darn cool guy too. So anyway, I hope when this gets to the ballot that that it will lose by a long shot. Just one of the guys I ran across that was getting signatures for this recall straight up admitted to me that the only reason he was doing it is because they were paying so much money for every single signature. I don't know what that exact figure is, but I know it's up there. I think it was like 10 or even more. And yes, a lot of these guys collecting these signatures only because it paid so much. Let's see, Chris, Drew, Sandy, Justin, you guys are all really good friends of mine. And let's see, with the last 30 seconds I got here, I'll say, can you come to me and so we can meet up? Again, that number for anybody listening, 831-346-9888. And I'll give the last 20 seconds to the next guy.
Good afternoon, council members. Rick Longinati. I'm remembering last January when the council, in the face of a lot of public opposition to passing a just cause eviction ordinance, that you all decided that you would want to investigate a stakeholder committee, a task force to study protections for renters. And the Center for Consensus and Collaboration was engaged, and Dave Stepos from that group came back to you in June and said, there were some obstacles to moving forward with the kind of stakeholder process, and one of the obstacles was the conflict on the council, and the other was the recall. And he said, I feel sorry for this city because you're about to go on a war footing for the next 2 years. He talked about a cycle of conciliation and a cycle of retaliation, and we're still in this cycle of retaliation. I think our planet's still in the cycle of retaliation. But there are seeds of conciliation everywhere in all our hearts, because that's what we really want. I think what we need to do is trust that there are processes to unite us, even around the thorniest issues such as tenant protections and homelessness issues. If we trust that, then we won't resort to the recall. I think the recall results from a lack of trust that we can really solve problems. So just take people out of office and that'll solve it. But I know we know that doesn't really work. So as you are leaders, all leaders of this community, can you please set an example to get us on the road to the cycle of conciliation? Thank you.
Right.
Hi, my name's Michael Campbell. I'm recently a resident of Santa Cruz. I've come from Virginia Beach. I'm from the East Coast. Love it there, but not a place for me to live. I've been all across the country. I've never found love like I found here in Santa Cruz. I have not been able to get help. This man right here walks up to me and talks to me. We sit down and we have coffee at Santa Cruz Roasting Company. And we sit down and we talk about how people here in the community, homeless people, can actually help. We talked about a homeless to housed type project where you could do multi-skilled people that can, like, say someone's a carpenter, someone's a framer, someone's a plumber. You get all them to work together and get the community together with it, and you can all build a lot cheaper, more efficiently, less homeless, more jobs. It helps with keeping people that are addicted clean. Because if you give someone something to do, they're not going to want to relapse. They're going to want to step forward and get help. And with Drew Glover, he's trying to help. I do appreciate everything that you do, bro. I appreciate everything that all of you do. And thank you very much. Y'all have a great day. God bless.
Are there any other members of the community who want to address us on this topic? Okay, you'll be our last.
Hi, my name's James Whitman. I've been a resident in this county since 1993, resident of the Santa Cruz area about the last 6 years. Been coming to the city council meetings maybe the last 3.5 months. I have more familiarity with the Santa Cruz County court system than I ever wanted to. Been a builder for about 30 years. I guess my hands have personally been on between $5 and $7 billion worth of projects. I usually come in and fix stuff at the end. So I guess I'm somewhat of a real estate developer. Something that I see with Drew and Chris is they actually come in at some point during these meetings and make things happen and bring money into the city. So I'm just really frustrated that this is happening because I would really rather focus my attention in other areas. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott Graham. This is a very sad day for the city. I realize that the state law allows for recalls, but this recall started out with a bunch of lies and half-truths on the recall petition itself, and then the people circulating the petition want out of their way to make things up to smear these two council members' reputations in order to get the signatures. They were out there lying to the public on a daily basis, and it's regrettable that the rest of the council didn't stand up and say, wait a minute, we gotta do this in a fair and equitable way. We can't have people out there smearing people's reputations, making things up, telling half-truths. That isn't democracy. That's a form of fascism when you go to those extents to try to get rid of somebody because you don't like their politics. It's not about that these guys did anything wrong. It's just their politics. That's why they have this recall. It's the developers and real estate agents and greedy people, basically, that are behind this whole recall effort and are trying to remove these guys from office because they don't like their politics. And that's no way to run a recall. If they want to do a recall and do everything above board and do it honestly, that's the way to do it. But they didn't do it that way. They lied, they cheated, and they smeared these two guys' reputations.
So we'll go ahead and return it back to council action. I know Bonnie Bush, our city clerk, described this. This is primarily ministerial. This is something that we just sort of recognize was verified by our county clerk, and this is our process essentially to do to follow sort of this sort of guidelines around that. It's not a position one way or another essentially. Any questions, Councilmember Glover?
Oh, it's less of a question, more of a comment. It's a good time for that. So first of all, thank you to everyone that came out to share your perspectives. That's really heartwarming. I actually teared up there for a minute, just about the words that you're using and the impact that I'm able to have on your existence from up here on the dais. So thank you for coming to share that perspective with me and with the community. There was another perspective that was shared with me in the community correspondence surrounding this item. It was one of two items that came in, which I found particularly intriguing. And the statement reads as follows, quote, recalls have become a national strategy to undo democratic elections. Since the local recall petitions received adequate votes, an election must be called, if not by the council, then by the county clerk. But none of the claims in the recall petition rise to a high enough level to strike out a fair election. I would like Santa Cruz to be principled and not support undermining fair elections. I support the council, or I suggest that the council defer to the clerk, who is then bound to call an election and vote down item 15. That's according to Elections Code 11241. And for people that aren't familiar with it, it reads as follows. If the governing body fails to issue the order within 14 days of the signature validation, the county elections official within 5 days shall set the date for holding the election. If the recall is to be voted on by voters in more than one county, the election official in the county with the largest numbers of registered voters, and so on, since that doesn't apply to us. I'd also like to point out that one of the people that has come up to speak twice to us today, that has a self-proclaimed member of the recall campaign, who's made it very clear here in past meetings, has recited severely problematic, premeditated statements of right-wing, anti-diversity, anti-sustainability, anti-public program rhetoric. And I don't know about the rest of you up here on the dais, but that is not the values of Santa Cruz that I know and love. I think Santa Cruz should be a place that values and emphasizes diversity, sustainability, and equity. And we have the ability to do that with this council right now and send a message to not validate the campaign that has been wrought with lies, defamation, intentional misinformation, and other attempts to cause disarray essentially in our community. I believe, and I hope my colleagues agree with this, that we should defer the decision to the clerk and vote no on the item or to table it. And so I call on one of my colleagues not being targeted by the recall to make that motion.
So now would be the time for a motion, and I can't make a motion, so I will open it up for a motion on this item. Councilmember Brown?
I have a comment. So I'm really sad and dismayed to be here deliberating, or to the extent we have that option on this issue. And I also understand that this is a ministerial action. I understand, Councilmember Glover, the point you have raised is a possibility. However, I just feel like at this point we do have a responsibility to put this on the ballot. And I can tell you now that, and I'm not, in no way does this mean that I am validating what's happening here, and this will be the first, last, and only I vote that I'll be casting in this matter. But I'm not going to make the motion.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's going to go on the ballot no matter what. So whether or not we make the motion and pass it tonight, or whether we don't make the motion and pass it tonight, then either way it's going to go on the ballot. So it's not our responsibility to validate a process that has been based in fallacies, misinformation, and lies. And I think that if we vote in support of it, even if you don't agree with it, to still vote in support of it validates that campaign, especially from us up here on the body, because I will say it is a dangerous precedent where a small minority of citizens can start a citizen petition gathering process based on lies in the first place, throw massive amounts of money behind it, cover it with lies, hire people to, I was reported that people reported to me that they paid up to $16 a signature for them to come and do stuff. And then now we're here. So I can make the motion, but I would encourage one of my colleagues that's not targeted to do it.
If I could say that the law says the governing body shall make that call, and if you fail to do so, then the county clerk will do it. So the law does put that on you, but if you fail to do it, the county clerk will do it.
Thank you for clarifying. Vice Mayor Cummings.
I'm going to say that I hear a lot of the community concern around this. This has been a really difficult year for everyone. And I respect everybody who I share this dais with. This whole process has been further creating divisions in our community. And I personally, it's been difficult being up here and trying to work with folks as this has been going on. I think that fundamentally what's underlying this is that, if there are issues with this process, then we as a community and we as a society need to deal with the process under which this took place. So finance reform, how we can determine whether or not what people are saying on the streets are honest or not. But we currently, the county clerk, given the process that we currently have, has validated the signatures. And as a member of this body and under the laws and the oaths that we've sworn, I'll move this item so that we put this on the ballot. And I just hope that during this recall process or the election process that the members of our community really understand what they're voting for, and that we'll figure out what's going to happen in March. Or we'll see what happens after March. So I'm going to move the staff recommendation.
I appreciate how difficult this was for you, and I think we all understand the difficulty. And so in that spirit, I'll second the motion.
So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Cummings, seconded by Councilmember Matthews. Any further discussion? Councilmember Glover?
Yeah, that's incredibly, as you can imagine, it's disappointing to have someone that I ran with in 2018 to do that. Also, it's strange that no one looked over to the city attorney. City attorney, let me ask you a question really quick. What happens if we don't do it today? What legal ramifications are there against us?
County elections official will place it on the ballot.
Right, but what negative legal ramifications will this body endure or will come about?
I really don't think it's an issue of legal ramifications.
Right, and so I'm just a little confused with the rationale about it being the law when it is written in the elections code that the body can not do it, and in that case it gets transferred to the county clerk. So the rationale behind the motion falls flat when you look at the logic with regards to legalities and our responsibility as a committee. So just with that, do what you're going to do, but I strongly disagree.
Just to clarify, the law states that the governing body shall order it placed on the ballot, and I think the fact that there's a backup plan included in the statutory scheme reflects the difficulty of questions, just like the one that the council's grappling with right now.
Okay. Unless there's any further comment, we'll go ahead and maybe call the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay, so that passes with Councilmember Matthews, Vice Mayor Cummings, myself, and Myers voting in support, Brown, Crone, and Glover voting against. Okay, we'll take maybe a 2-minute transition as we move to item number 16 in our agenda.
You too, Nate.